Hey there, Squirrel Army. Today we're doing another precon upgrade guide. This is for Mishra's Burnished banner, the Grixis, so blue, black, and red precon deck. And we better have a look at what this deck has to offer us. So Mishra is our commander, obviously. He's Mishra Experiment 1. He is 2 and Grixis colors, so blue, black, and red. 5/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of target non-creature artifact we control. Its name is Mishra's War Form. It's a 4/4 construct artifact creature in addition to its other types. It gains haste until end of turn, then we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So it's an interesting deck where we're kind of cloning our artifacts and kind of sacrificing, hence why I termed this deck as artifact sacrifice in the title there, but it's more cloning as well, I guess, as well. But we better get along and have a look at the actual deck list and see what it has to offer us. Alrighty guys, so here we are having a look now at the list, and again you can see the price for this list that Architect is using. Take all prices that we've got here with a bit of grain of salt. Old cards getting reprinted, gonna go down in price. New cards, no one really knows what they do, where they're good, blah, 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 etc. Gotta say this every single time because some people underrate or overrate certain cards and whatnot. So it does take a while for prices to settle. Yeah, you guys can find this deck list anywhere by searching it up if you really want to. But I've got to look through this list, figure out what I want to take out, what I want to put in, and what will go well with what we're trying to do, which is a more make copies stroke sacrifice type build. So it's not 100% too different, but it is a bit different. So we are going to want some more graveyard stroke sacrifice style stuff. So that will be the sort of stuff I'll be looking for this one. More card advantage based on the graveyard and whatnot, and things like that. So yeah. But anyway, I better get going and have a look at that and see what I can come up with. And then I'll come back for you guys and show you what I've done. If you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing and turning on the notification. Alright guys, we're back after a bit of work and you can see the price now that I've come to. And again, you can see the price of the additions, bar one, of course, which I have to go through, which is Power Depot, which is 25-cent card. Oh, plus some basic lands, just islands, mountains, and some swamps, I believe. That's all I put in. Wherever the swamps are there. But yeah, that was all that I put in besides what's in this pile here, which I'll go through in just a second. You can see the amount as well that I took out. So yeah. But we'll go through now what I actually took out and why, and then I'll go through what I put in. So, Abrade, like, it's not a bad spell, and I think certainly if you're playing a more meta game that cares about things that are, you know, 3 toughness or less, it's really good, but honestly, that's not that huge part of the meta. So, no matter how good it is in that part of the meta is a very small part of the meta. So, yeah, don't worry about it. Just play other things that are more broad for the rest of the format. Now, I'm not going to talk about the lands that are in this section, except for this part, just to say almost all of the lands that I've cut are just bad lands that I don't think you really need. As I say, all the other lands in here are bad tap lands. And if you have any kind of budget, you're just going to put in good shocks and fetches and whatnot and good duels and whatnot. And if you don't, just put in basics, that's fine too. Besides the few utility lands that you sort of need, you don't need much in terms of fixing. Bedevil, just too much mana for not enough things to target, really. So I just felt like we can take it out. Blast Fortune Hellkite. Nice to sacrifice an artifact, nice to deal double damage to our opponents and whatnot, but honestly, it just doesn't really do a whole lot for us, doesn't do enough, so just took it out. Chaos Warp, it's one of the better spells that a lot of people would probably keep in this deck. I'm just not a huge fan of it myself, and I find that other removal is just better than what this is. I'd rather just destroy their thing and leave them with a random 3/3 or something than do this. So yeah, I just decided that can come out. Dreamstone Hedron, just a bit too much mana for the kind of effect that I think it provides the deck. So I just decided to take it on out. Expressive Iterations, just a sort of cantrip card. It's a pretty good one, but that's not what we're caring about in this deck. We really want to care about artifacts in this deck, and yes, this can help us find some of those artifacts or whatnot, but again, we could play some artifacts that have that sort of card advantage baked into them, so we don't really need this, so we might as well play something that's a bit better. Fact or Fiction, not really what we want to be doing again, same sort of thing, just doesn't help us enough. We can find other effects that can really help us out a lot more. Faithless Looting, same sort of thing, even though it has flashback, and the flashback I like, but yeah, just not really enough of what we want. Feed the Swarm, I don't really like this card. I know a lot of people really like this card because you can destroy enchantments in black or in these sorts of colors, and for that reason, I don't think it's that amazing. So, I don't know, but that's just me. Sorcery Speed really hurts it. Yeah, I'm fine with the losing life part. That's fine, but just the sorcery speed kills it. Yes, you haven't got very many other options. In fact, basically none, but that's fine. You don't really need to care that much about them, that you need to stoop to this level, I don't think. Falwar Stone, really good card here, but I just feel like we want more utility sort of abilities in this deck rather than just needing this kind of fixing, so I just took it out. Geth, it's kind of funny to try to take our opponent's stuff and mill our opponent's stuff or copy our opponent's stuff with what our commander's doing, but honestly, it's just not that interesting of a strategy. We would rather just be doing our own thing and getting our own advantages and having our own cards that do our own stuff rather than having this guy in here and having to try to, you know, have enough mana to activate him every turn or whatnot. Giant Rider, or Riker, not a bad card, gets bigger based on the highest mana value of artifacts we control, which can be pretty big. It is an evasive flyer. When it deals combat damage to a player, we reveal that many cards from the top of our library to put an artifact card revealed this way into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. It's just one card to your hand, so it's a little bit too much workaround for the payoff for what it is. Hellkite Igniter, we can buff it up by the number of artifacts we control. Like Giant Riker already does that and does something else. So, and we cut it. Yeah, Hellkite Igniter has haste, but that's not nearly that relevant. We can find other things that do that. Herald has Improvise, which means he is a lot cheaper than what he actually is, but still, at the beginning of your end step, each opponent discards a card. Yeah, sure, that's okay, but just okay. And then we can sack an artifact to have target creature get -2/-2. We want more than that out of being able to having to sacrifice our artifacts. We want more than that. So I just felt like it doesn't do enough for what we want. Metalwork Colossus is a cool card, but this is not what we're doing. We're doing stuff with non-creature artifacts, and this is a creature, so it really doesn't do a whole lot with what we're kind of trying to do. You know, we could sacrifice some artifacts to return it to our hand, and it does cost less, equal to the number of artifacts. There are some combos that you can kind of get into doing with it, but I just think it's too much of a build around for us to actually put enough effort into doing to actually get enough out of. Mizio, it's way too much mana and way too slow to do what it's doing. And a lot of the artifacts that we have in this deck are fairly cheap artifacts for the most part. Yes, there are some that are more expensive, but for the most part, we really do have a lot more cheap ones. So we're not going to get a huge amount of value out of this. This is more for a deck that's cheating in huge artifacts and whatnot, not this sort of deck. Oblivion Stone, it's a great board wipe, but I think this was probably one of the last ones that I probably cut. The problem here is that it's just way too slow to put fate counters on the thing, and then sacrifice it. Even the whole, if we don't put any fate counters on it, and then have to pay 5 more mana to sacrifice it type thing. 8 mana to destroy things is just way too much. We have other options than this. Yes, we could recur it or whatever, or we can make copies of it. But again, just too much effort for too little payoff. I don't think it's really worth it. Brawler, it only really works when it's in the graveyard, and again, it's a creature. So we don't really care about this thing. We just don't have enough time to invest again into this kind of thing. We rather just get other things that do bigger and better things. Silas, just way too small to make any impact and actually do anything in the game, I think. So I don't think it's worth our time to invest in. Spine, just way too much mana to invest just to destroy a thing. Even if we can copy it, it's not really that worth it, I don't think. There might be some things that I'm wrong about that with, but I just don't think it's really worth it for 7 mana. So yeah, I just decided to take it out. The Devastation, again, we've just got better ways to make a board wipe, and just creating a whole bunch of Power Stones, meaning that this is sort of half cheaper, kind of, isn't really what we want to do. It's just not worth our time to invest too much into making those into those tokens. In the Urza deck, this would have probably been alright, but that deck, already had a whole lot going on in it and probably wouldn't need a card like this. Already pretty stacked. Thirst for Knowledge, just a cantrip card, but I just don't think we really need this type of thing. We need more permanent ways to get card advantage and card draw and whatnot, so just no. Thoughtcast, same basic thing. Thran Dynamo just hasn't got any extra utility, plus it's already 4 mana to tap for 3, so it's just already, so not really worth our time, I don't think. Trading Post, I don't really know what to make of this card ever. It never seems to be that good, in my opinion. Yeah, I could be 1000% wrong with that. There are some things that we could do with it, especially if we copy it 5 or 6 times or whatever. And there are some combos and some loops with it and whatnot, but again, it just seems like too little, too slow, too much of an investment to get going. So rather just not bother about it. Traxos, just a creature we really don't care about, and doesn't really do a whole lot or enough for us to care about in this deck at least. Workshop Elders, just way too slow. Even if it gives our stuff flying, we're only probably making 1 creature per turn anyway with our commander or whatnot. Sometimes we'll make more, but beginning of combat we get a non-creature and we put 4 counters on it. That's not bad, but again, we could just find other things that do more for us. So yeah, I just thought we'll take it out and put some other stuff in. Now, I will say that some of the cards that are in the ads are from the Warhammer decks and whatnot, so they are kind of hard to get. Not impossible, but they are kind of hard to get. So if you don't want to put them in, you can remove them from this list, definitely. But anyway, Aether Spellbomb, just a little cantripping artifact for the most part, but it can also bounce somebody's thing to their hand, so that nice little bit of utility where we can bounce somebody's thing or we can draw a card is nice, plus we can copy it with our commander and get more copies with other things that we're doing, so very useful. Agent of the Throne makes our opponents lose life when our artifacts go to our graveyard, or when our creatures go to our graveyard, so very useful to help us win the game. Baleful Mastery just for okay, decent removal. Clypethex Spider. Again, this is a really great card. Whenever non-token artifact, creature, or vehicle. Oh, actually, this is for creatures. But anyway, we still have some creatures, I think, in this deck. Maybe. In this section, at least. But we draw a card for them, so that's real good anyway, still. Determined Intuitionist. It's an enchantment. On combat, we populate. We create a token that's a copy of a creature, and that creature gains haste, and we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So that's kind of along the lines of what we're doing anyway. So we want to make all of these creatures so that we can bop our opponents and get value off of sacrificing them and whatnot. Forsaken Monument, this is silly, especially when we start copying it. It gets really silly, but it gives our artifact creatures +2/+2, or colorless creatures, which all our artifacts are. Whenever we tap a permanent for colors, we add an additional color, so that's pretty good. Whenever we cast a colorless spell, we gain 2 life. So all of those are really good. So it really helps us out and does a whole lot, especially when we start copying it. Golden Egg, just another cantrip card, but again, we can do other things with it. And whatnot. We can get more value out of these sorts of cards when they have extra effects. Imposter Mech, it enters the battlefield and we can copy an opponent's creature, except it's a vehicle with crew 3 and loses all other types or whatnot. So that's kind of cool, but also we can copy this thing to make more copies of our opponent's stuff, because it's not a creature until it's a vehicle. And whatnot. So that's really good. Plus, when we make a copy of it, we don't have to abide by the crew 3 because it's already a creature. So that gets around the whole crewing issue there. So vehicles are pretty good. Ingenious Archaeist. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, it deals that much damage to each opponent. So another way to get damage through on our opponents, slowly killing them. Night Paladin, when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. When we copy this every single turn, doing 4 damage every single turn, that starts getting really good. Then we can swing for 6, Trample, which is really good, and do a whole lot more stuff. So there's a lot more things we could do. Marionette Master makes a whole bunch of tokens, or it gets bigger. And whenever an artifact we control is put into the graveyard, each opponent loses life equal to his power. So yeah, it can be really useful in this sort of deck, draining our opponent's lives and killing them fairly quickly. Moonsliver Key, I'm not huge on tutoring, but we need any kind of utility that we can kind of get on some artifacts. So this seemed pretty good. And we've got a whole bunch of artifacts to choose from. That's kind of why I don't like tutoring, is because I go, I have no idea what to tutor for, and there's too many options. But whatever. But this only tutors for a mana, rock, or a land, basically. So, that narrows down the choices a little bit at least. So it is a little bit more narrow at least. So you don't have as many choices, I guess. Mystic Forge, just a really great card. Again, casting artifacts from the top of our library. We can look at the top card and cast it, and we can get rid of the top card by tapping it. Really useful. Schematic, it makes itself a 1/1 when it enters, but this gets really silly when we start copying it over and over and over 4 or 5 times, and we get a 2-drop 4/4 from it as well, essentially every single turn. So that's really useful as well. Prize Statue, again, same sort of idea. It makes a treasure and whatnot, but that stacks up quite a bit when we're copying it every single turn and whatnot, and sacrificing it and whatnot, and doing all this other stuff. So can get really silly really quickly. Reality Shift is really good removal for us in our colors. So when in, Fire Weaver just deals more damage to our opponents, so helps us kill our opponents. Resculpt, just really good removal. Psy just makes a whole bunch of free tokens for us that we can, sack, or we can do other things with. And he can sack artifacts to draw cards, which is really useful. Sluvak's Tome. This one's actually an interesting card. Enters the battlefield, we take the initiative, and the initiative is pretty useful. It does a whole bunch of useful things for us. We tap to add 1 with it. If we have the initiative, we tap to add 2. We can pay 3 exile cards from the top of our library until we exile a non-land card, and we may cast that card without paying its mana cost, but only if we've completed the dungeon. But it's still a really good card. It does a whole lot for us, especially when we start copying it and start taking the initiative over and over and over again. Completing the dungeon isn't very difficult anyway. But yeah, it's really easy when we copy this 3 or 4 times per turn and whatnot, so it can be really good. Sculpting Steel enters the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield, so we can just clone our best thing as well, whatever enter the battlefield or activated abilities we really want to utilize for the turn, we can get that right away. Smuggler's Copter, when it attacks or blocks, we draw a card. But if we do, we discard a card, but that's still alright. It's still a 3/3 flyer, and when we, again, copy this turn after turn, it gets quite silly. Reality Chip, we may look at the top card of our library anytime, and as long as it's attached to a creature, we may play lands and cast spells from the top. So really useful. Thy Name is Death. We destroy all non-artifact creatures. We do have a few non-artifact creatures, but mostly of our deck is artifacts and artifact creatures for the most part. So a lot of our deck will dodge this, so we don't need to worry. Thought Monitor, just a really nice cantrip sort of card. Can be sacrificed for other effects, gotten back with other effects and whatnot. So can be really useful, and yeah. Thunderhawk Gunship enters the battlefield. We create 2/2 knight, white knight creature warriors, whatever they are, with vigilance. When it attacks, attacking creatures we control gain flying, so it can give all our stuff flying, which is useful. But just making those extra crewers, essentially, and just like giving us extra blockers and just doing a whole bunch of things. Plus, it's a 6/6 flyer, so it's really useful and whatnot. Weatherlight completed. I think this is probably the best vehicle that we've got. A lot of the other vehicles are kind of a little bit because we probably can't crew them that easy, other than Gunship, because it actually comes with its own crew, essentially. But anyway, all of our stuff's going to be dying, and when our stuff dies, we draw cards. Until we have 7 or more counters on it, then we just scry one. But that's fine, we can attack with it as long as it has 4 or more counters on it. So this can actually be pretty useful and whatnot throughout the game, especially when we start copying it and whatnot. Witching Well enters the battlefield, scry 2. So scry 2's okay, and we can sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. The sacrifice ability is a little bit expensive, but we mostly care about the scry 2 ability. Plus, it's a 1-drop 4/4 again, so those are pretty good stats, really, overall. And if we've got mana late game and we haven't got much to do with it, we can just sack one of the wells. Now, there is a little bit of a rules clarification that I want to go through quickly. Any of these cards that say itself, like Witching Well or whatever, they do work because basically they're referring to the card itself, even with our commander changing their names. So it still refers to this card. So you sacrifice this card to draw 2 cards, even if its name isn't Witching Well anymore. It still works. So just any case of any confusion with that. But those are the additions that I added here. And you guys can let me know what you guys think of this list and what I've done to it and whatnot. And yeah, I'll be coming out with more stuff here and there sporadically. But yeah, one of the best things that I did think about with this commander is how you copy lands and whatnot, because those are non-creature artifacts. So you can basically copy your own lands. And any mana rocks as well. It's like, oh, okay, I got a free ramp with my commander, and I can, you can just tap it. You don't have to, use it as a creature. But yeah, it is really useful when you get to use them as creatures, much better. But yeah, like, I hope this this list is pretty decent. Not perfect, but of course pretty decent. But anyway, you guys can let me know what you think, as I say. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.